This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And make sure to order Jamie Glazov's new critically acclaimed jihadist psychopath, how he is charming, seducing, and devouring us. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Jamie Glazov Moment. Tonight, the mask that hides God's image. The spiritual battle right in front of our eyes. Well, my friends, our interesting times are continuing. The mask being enforced everywhere around us. And I wanted to stress the spiritual war that's right in front of our eyes connected to this. My friends, Satan is very busy, working 24/7. And in his dimension, the time is obviously even different than the way we see time. But, in so many cases, when we are examining it, it's so bizarre, so morbidly perverse, a lot of what he's doing that we don't understand it right away. And I've been, monitoring, watching things, throughout my life, all of my life, and aware of this spiritual dimension. I'm always wondering, what is happening here? So now there's this mask and this social distancing, and I'm thinking, okay, just wait, whoa. What is he doing now? Okay, okay, right? You see? So I want to take a step back for a minute. I want to focus on the mask and the spiritual connection. But I want to take a step back in terms of my thoughts over the years and how it's interconnected with what I want to talk about. I studied Islam many years of my life, and the hijab, the burqa, when you look at the epicenter of that ideology of Islam, you see Mecca, where women are covered in black garbage bags. And even right now, when I say it, there's a lot of people going, oh, Jamie, don't say that. So somewhere I'm wrong. I'm being racist and prejudiced for calling what's covering the women black garbage bags. I'm being insensitive. Somewhere I'm the bad person, and it kind of exonerates what's happening to the women in that ideology. But I gave a lot of thought to throughout my life in terms of what is happening there. Because anybody with a brain and that also believes in God knows that there's something wrong when you look at that. When you look at women being covered up in black garbage bags. What's happening there? Well, what's happening, my friends, is that the devil hates women. And when you understand and believe in the reality of Jesus Christ, everything becomes clear. You begin to see the whole puzzle coming into place. Jesus Christ came through a woman, through Mary. And so God says to the serpent, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. This is the first mentioning of Jesus Christ right in the beginning of the Old Testament. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. We see the prophecy of Jesus Christ. We see the prophecy of Jesus crushing Satan's head through his crucifixion, through his resurrection. And we also see the prophecy of the serpent striking Jesus' heel in the nailing of his feet, of his legs on the cross and the crucifixion, striking the heel. So, in this dynamic, when God says to the serpent, there will be enmity between you and the woman, we get a better understanding of Satan's hatred for women. And Satan hates women, especially because Jesus came into our world through a woman, his mother Mary. Satan also hates women because of their ability to procreate. And he's also very jealous of their beauty. Because women's beauty is the incarnation of God's beauty on earth. And Satan wants to cover that up. with the burqa, with the hijab, with the niqab, whatever degree of that monstrosity that comes with that. And so we see that the epicenter of Mecca, where we see Islam, women are completely covered in those black sheets or whatever you want to call it, because Satan's goal is to cover up women. And we also see under Islam it comes with a lot of other things: female genital mutilation, honor killings, child marriage, forced covering, forced segregation, all those barbaric abuses under Sharia law. It's no coincidence that women are so barbarically treated under Islam in the context of what I was just saying. It's also no surprise under Islam that Jews and Christians are so hated and persecuted. We understand, of course, Jesus Christ and that dynamic and why Satan hates Jesus Christ for 10 million billion reasons. Also remember that Jesus Christ was a Jew, is a Jew, and will, in his physical form, and will come back in the second coming through the Jews. So the genocide against the Jews by Satan that's being perpetrated 24/7 becomes more understandable in terms of how Lucifer thinks. And so when we see the Nazi attempt to exterminate Jewish people, we begin to understand the spiritual reality behind that. When we see Islamic jihad against Jewish people, we begin to understand that. When we see the burqa, we begin to understand that. There is a spiritual component. I wanted to begin with this to just lay a foundation to share my thoughts of how we see what's happening right before our eyes right now, to understand that there's a spiritual context to everything that's happening. So let's fast forward, and maybe not necessarily from the timeline because all of that is still happening, but I'm saying in terms of my discussion here, let's switch from the burqa now to the mask, the mutated carbon copy of the burqa. And something's going on here, the mask, and it's interwoven with the social distancing being forced upon us now. Let me touch on that for a minute. Also spiritual component, because I'm watching it and I'm thinking, separating humans from one another, an attack on God's creation. Because humans are meant to be social creatures. And so we're being separated from one another. And there's a camouflage for the reason of doing it. It's supposedly for our safety. But is it? For instance, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York very recently admitted that it's shocking for him to discover one basic fact, that 66% of new hospitalizations are those of people who have been, quote, largely sheltering at home. Wonder what that means about social distancing. So in other words, the government's directive to crush human souls and the economy on the altar of social distancing might not really be that legitimate and has made everything worse. We're destroying this country's economy with this whole social distancing, stay home thing, but maybe the whole thing is wrong. But it's being done on purpose and they're covering it up. But why? You've got to read the article by William Sullivan. It's an American thinker. Look it up. It's called Social Distancing is Snake Oil, Not Science. Now, Sullivan points out that this whole thing about how you got to keep a 6-foot space between healthy people, even outdoors, is not based on science. It's an arbitrary suggestion that we've been conditioned to accept without any evidence. There's no science behind social distancing. It's an experiment. There's no science to justify separating and quarantining young, healthy people, young, healthy adults. Now, in this situation, we know that deaths in regard to COVID, and they're tragic and they're sad. Our heart goes out to the people, and most of them are the elderly and the sick. But the issue is, while we always have compassion and empathy for suffering and for people that pass, we have to remember that in this case, the numbers are very small in terms of the whole percentages. Dr. Bob Shillman has written an article, COVID-19, Not Nearly as Dangerous as You Think, in Front Page Magazine. Read it. And he shows that the numbers just are not adding up in terms of COVID being, told to us as if it's a danger to everyone. So in other words, we're pushing social distancing anyway and destroying our nation's economy, ruining millions of people's lives, ruining this entire country, causing so many mental health consequences on this country on the altar of a myth. So where am I going with this? Well, why is this happening? Because it's deliberate and there's something spiritual behind it. And I need to talk about this for hours tonight. I have to try to make it as brief as possible because, time is valuable and I want to keep your attention. So I'm focusing on the mask. So let's get into the mask here. First of all, humans are an air-dependent species. The mask restricts airflow through the nose and the mouth. We are rebreathing carbon dioxide when we have that mask on. Not getting enough fresh oxygen into your lungs is not a good thing. And you're not able to get rid of the carbon dioxide. And so therefore, welcome hypercapnia, when there's too much carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. And that has consequences. Now, what are the consequences? Let me see. Dizziness, shortness of breath. Oh, and wait a minute, there's those other little things like brain damage and dementia. Now, I wonder why basic science warns us against sleeping under our covers. Dr. Russell Blaylock, look up his article, Google it, Face Masks Pose Serious Risks to the Healthy. Dr. Blaylock reminds us that until recently, the CDC did not even recommend wearing a face mask or covering of any kind unless a person was known to be infected. But that is until just recently. But why? Blaylock goes over all the facts. The mask puts you at an increased risk of illness on many levels. As I just said, drop in oxygen levels causes impairment in many things, and especially in immunity. Blaylock stresses that low oxygen promotes inflammation, which in turn promotes many diseases, including the growth, invasion, and spread of cancers. Rebreathing viruses. Wearing the mask raises the concentration of viruses in our lungs and the nasal passages because we can't get them out. Imagine you're wearing this thing for 8 hours. Humans need to exhale viruses, but if they're wearing a mask, they won't be able to have them escape. The viruses concentrate in the nasal passages. And what happens if they enter our nerves and then travel into our brain? Read Dr. Russell Blaylock, the article again, Face Masks Pose Serious Risks to the Healthy. So what's going on here? Why are we not being told this? Why are these things being imposed? I wanted to give you a context here, and now I want to narrow in on the fact that this is deliberate because it's spiritual. There's a spiritual dynamic to this. Nino Vitale, a Republican state lawmaker in Ohio, recently said something precisely what I've been giving so much thought to over all these years, and that I've mentioned earlier in terms of the burqa. So much respect for Nino Vitale for having the courage to say this. Vitale says that he's not going to wear a mask during the coronavirus pandemic because it covers up the face, which is, as he has profoundly pointed out, the likeness and image of God. Let us make man in our image. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. So Vitale, in reference to this reality, is pointing out how we are created by our Creator. And he points out that as humans, we are created in the image and likeness of God. And so he stresses that when we think of this image, do we think of the chest, our legs, our arms? We think of a human's face. So the image of God is reflected in the image of our face. So think about this, ladies and gentlemen. I've been thinking this while I've been walking around looking at it. It's so surreal. But if we can't see each other's faces, we can't see any semblance of our humanity, of our personalities, of our smiles, everything that comes with being human. We can't see facial expressions. We can't see the reflection of each other's souls. We are deprived of seeing God and His creation through each other's image. And so now I wonder, in whose interest is it to decapitate us, to stop us from reflecting the image of God in ourselves and seeing it in each other? What is this mask doing? Who and what is really behind this? Republican state lawmaker in Ohio, Nino Vitale, stressed this theme. And he was ridiculed by the left. Oh, they made fun of him and made jokes. And I mean, just go to the leftist media and see what they were saying about it. But thank you, Vitale, Mr. Vitale, because we know that something is obviously going on, and we see it on every level. We see it on every level. And I'd like to thank Mr. Vitale for being so brave and courageous for pointing that out about the mask. And so as I'm ending this evening with you, my friends, this is all interconnected with the Antichrist forces that are accelerating right now around us. As I mentioned, the social distancing. Now, we talked about the mask hiding God's image, the burqa camouflaging, hiding the beauty of women, which is the incarnation of God's beauty in heaven. Now the social distancing, as I've discussed earlier, that lacks science. But let's think about even social distancing a little bit more on a spiritual level. Separating people, bad enough. But in a spiritual dynamic, separating the faithful from worshiping together in God's house. In terms of Catholics, it's separating people from the Eucharist, from the sacrament of confession, from the altar. And we know that the altar is exorcistic in the sense that the closer that humans are to the altar, there's an exorcistic effect of fighting the demons and getting rid of demons. And so the farther away humans are from the altar, the less they have that closeness to the altar. We also see the separation here of non-Catholic Christians from gathering to praise Jesus together. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. Matthew 18:20. So for the deep state, no wonder it's so important to close the churches for our safety. But for some reason, they don't want to shut the abortion clinics down. No social distancing necessary at the abortion clinics, but at churches, absolutely mandatory. My friends, we've been being groomed for so long in terms of this. And so what's coming up now? The endless quarantines, the forced vaccinations, the mandatory chip. I've been watching over the last 10 years, just also observing just these tattoos, the tats. And no, I'm not talking about one tattoo by one person that likes the tattoo. I'm not completely crazy. I'm talking about it as a movement, as a culture. The tattoos. Everybody filling up, the millennials just filling up with all their tattoos. And then at the same time, we see their apps on their phone, the social media, the apps, the tattoos, the apps. When you look around, the young people today, just their app, the selfie, the social media, the Instagram, their tattoos. Well, gee, I wonder what's going to happen. The deep state masters just approach them now and say, hey, there's just one little more tattoo we need to put on you, no big deal. And the average young person today is like, oh, I'm already filled anyway. Yeah, just put it right there. So cool. Whereas the older generation, it would have been a big deal. But what's in that tattoo? What's on it? And then in terms of the phone, all those apps. Now the deep state just comes forward and says, oh yeah, we'll just put that little tattoo there, no big deal, it's for your safety. Oh, and we're just going to add a little app here for you, and it's for your safety as well. You know, just to make sure you're safe, and if you're around any sick people, it will buzz. And also if you're around a Trump supporter, yeah, it'll buzz as well, just for your safety. Revelation 13, verses 6 to 17. And the second beast required all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, the name of the beast or the number of its name. Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, the mask, we're seeing it all around us. People wearing it alone in their cars, walking down the street by themselves wearing it. My friends, I'm not right now attacking old people or sick people that are afraid and maybe wearing it. I'm not talking about any of that. Go build that straw man somewhere else. I'm talking about healthy young adults that have completely embraced this mass fascist health hysteria and the agenda that comes with it. And I'll be honest, I'm beginning to see them as my enemies on many levels ideologically. Because when I see a young, healthy person wearing that mask in his car or in her car, wow, submission to the fear and to the control, to the New World Order. So you're helping this whole thing instead of resisting it, right? And I'll be honest, when I see a person without a mask, I want to wave to them and give them a sign of my friendship and support, because something's going on here and we need to resist this evil. The hijab, the burqa, is a sign. It symbolizes commitment to Sharia law, and therefore a commitment and support, a commitment to and support of jihad. And just like the burqa, the mask is also a sign. It's a sign of allegiance. It's a sign of submission. But to whom? I think I've made it clear that we know the answer to that question. We'll see you on the next Jamie Glazov moment. Good night.